once you've cleaned up your model, you want to get into baking. You want to get all the color data into a single image texture that you can use to send to a company to have it printed in full color. Or maybe by the time you see this, you have a full color printer at home. I hope it doesn't take too long before we get there. In this case, I will go to global view again, and I will go to this mesh. This is one that I've used the whole time. And let's say I want to bake this into a new texture. You see, the thing is, we already have a material on this model, but it doesn't work that way. We can't send all this material data. It is Blender specific. So what we will do is create a brand new image in the image editor. This is a brand new fresh image editor for the unwrap. In edit mode, we can see it's already been unwrapped, and if we go to this layer here, or these options, you can see there's actually 3 unwraps on this mesh already. There's a UV text split, which I have no idea what it's there for. There is one for hair, because I think there was a very tiny layer of hair on the skin somewhere. We don't really need that at all. I can actually just get rid of this. Like this one, the UV text split, well, you see, it has a really nice sort of thing. I think this is used to define where hair might grow on our head. So there would be hair growing in the white bits, no hair growing in the black bits. That is my best guess. I don't need it. I just want UV text all for the color of the skin. And I want to make sure that the material settings actually use this unwrap data. So I'll go to the material and I will go to the texture, and in the texture look at the mapping, and you see it is mapped to the unwrapped coordinates. That's good. Those are this, but the layer is empty. That means it just uses the active layer. So before we had 3 layers in there, it would just use a top one because that was active. If I add a bake layer, that layer will become active, and I don't want it to use that. I want it to use the current one. So I have to select this. This is something I would do for every bit in this mesh before you do any kind of baking. Make sure the right layer is active. Actually, in this case, I happen to know we have a little bit of a problem which will make baking pretty much impossible. The default skin layer material is a node material. This tiny little button is switched on, and if you don't see it, it's gonna make your bake go completely black every time, because the nodes, the bake tries to use the nodes, but it can't really. So what I will do in this case, and I might do it in more places, is remove the material, actually remove that one as well, and just add a completely new material. Don't mess with any of the settings, go straight to the texture, and I will add, I think it was skin color 2, add this texture back into the new fresh material, and in the mapping make sure we are UV unwrapped and UV text all is enabled. So I've set it up. This can now be baked safely. What I need to do is add a new bake layer. Little trick, if I add a new layer now in edit mode, I will show you, it creates an unwrap where everything is back to its default position. That's a bit of a shame, because this unwrap is really neat. It's unfolded in a very clean, neat, nice way. So this new one, I'll get rid of it, and if I copy the original, when I'm in object mode, it will not create a completely new one, but it will base it on the old one. So this is the old one, this is the new one. They are exactly the same. And the new one I will call bake, and we'll make active. It's quite a bit of work to get this going. Then, as a final step, I want to get this bake layer on a brand new image. That is going to be the one that has all the render data on it. So get rid of the old image. It's still saved. I just got rid of it for this bake. Create a new one, and I will make, 1024 by 1024 is way too small. I will call it bake. There we go. And if I move away, it's already made a new black 1024 by 1024 pixels. In this case, it's deformed my unwrap a bit. I'll make it sort of what it used to be, and don't make it too big, because thing is, we need all this stuff in that one image. So we need room in here for the pants, for the boots, for her little shirt, for her gloves, for everything. There has to be room in this. So we make it a little bit smaller, this bit of skin, and we put it in a corner. Make sure the layer is active, so the little camera symbol is enabled. Looks good. The material is fixed. I will go to the render settings, and all the way at the bottom is the bake panel, and I want to have the correct settings. Now in this case I'm just baking this skin onto itself, so it's not selected to active. It doesn't have to clear the previous render. I will set the margin a little bit lower as well, and I want to bake only the textures, no lighting. So I've set everything up. I will save my file before I do any baking because I'm happy with the setup, and I'll hit bake. That wasn't too long at all. I'll go into object mode and zoom in here. This looks fine. So this is the bake of the skin. We can send this along with this bit of model to the 3D printers. If you want to see this result, I can actually go into textured view, and you see this is what we baked. Now the greenish stuff is just because the meshes, when we look in textured view, only have one side. So this is just the inside. That should be closed, right? This should have been extruded and merged at the center. Then you can't see inside it anymore. So it's another indicator of where things might be wrong. So we've baked this bit. Looks really good. And we can go on to the next one. I'll just show you one more to make sure we've covered everything. I'll take the gloves because they're attached to this a little bit, and again go to the material. This is not a it doesn't look like it's a node material, and we go to the glove texture that has a leather texture on it, and it should be, yep, assigned to the correct layer. This looks okay. So I will go to the texture layer. If I go into edit mode, it will show you how the texture is applied to it. This looks really nice. And once again, remember, in object mode, add a new bake layer, make that one active, and then in edit mode, remove the image and add the new bake image. And we put this somewhere where it doesn't do too much harm. I'll make it too big so we can clearly see what happens. It's active, it's on this image. By the way, always make sure, I just baked this, I'm happy with that result. Save your image every time after you do a nice bake. I will just do this one, I'll overwrite it. There we go. And it's saved. So it's saved. I think the setup is okay. I am not clearing this. If this is checked, it will get rid of your previous bake. You don't want to clear it. It all looks good. Let's hit bake. Now I hope in this case we don't need to speed it up, because it should be really fast. I think, because it shouldn't be rendering, it should just be taking the texture. And a lot of the time this happens. Something still went wrong. You see, it didn't bake correct. I'll just go back in. I don't know, we don't need specular intensity. This has a ramp on it. We don't need a ramp because we're not doing actual rendering. There's no subsurf, that's good. We don't need to be traceable, really, we don't care. I'm just going to try again now that I messed with this. Sometimes, you see, it just took the intensity, I think, or the ramp, and made it really dark. So now we get this, and it's really ugly. Thing to remember, I don't know if I just mentioned it before, I forgot. This, it doesn't do anti-aliasing. Baking doesn't anti-alias. It just gives you a pixel for a pixel. That means you get really blocky results. So if you want a clean bake, you bake to something much larger than the end result that you really want, and then later in an image editor you scale it back down. In my case, I baked to 4096 by 4096 pixels. It's really big. And then later in an image editor I scaled down to 2048, so there's 4 pixels for every one, and you get a really nice smooth end result. Something I have to show you is how I fixed the hair for Sintel, because that is made of particles. So here we go. What I made, I will append it from another Sintel file, and I will show you the end result for the hair mesh. In the object, I think it is called Geo Hair Proxy. Geo meaning not geography, but geometry. That's the name. I had to think about it for a minute. This is the hair mesh that I created, and all I did was I started from a plane. I'll put it in roughly the right position, and I made this around the hair. So we have the hair here. I'll put it on the layer with the hair. There we go. So we have it here. This is the mesh, and it is roughly where the hair is, you see. And then what you do, what I did was I rendered the hair. I made a little image. I will open it here. You see, I rendered from the left, the right, and the top, and I've made them together into this one image. So I rendered this just like we did all the way at the start of the file. I just made an image with a camera from a specific angle, so I had the hair like this. Then I went in for this one. It has a subsurf, that's why it's a little slow. I will disable that, and it's actually linked to the final bake I had, and I made this unwrap for it, which is really rough. Right, this is the same as for the gloves or the skin that I just did before. I made a nice unwrap somewhere in my bake image, and in this case, you know what, let's get rid of this really big bake.png, and I will replace it with a really small one. This is my new bake PNG, and I'll make it a little bigger and put it somewhere where it shouldn't be too much of a problem. So I make this first, and then, just like before, or actually the reverse of before, I want to create a second bake for the hair map, and that is this one. So you make this, and you make a material that uses that hair map and uses this as the texture. So you have the hair map textured into it, and you make that one, and you make a bake. So we can use those 3 basic images, front, side, and back, or top, to bake into this image. So we have this image assigned, and we go to bake the texture. That's kind of the trick. The only way to get the particles into the texture map is by baking them into a regular image and using that image as a base texture for your map. So basically all I'm doing now is rendering from the weird image from the side, the back, and the top into a neatly unfolded wrap. So we have it unfolded like this. If I go into local view and textured view, you can see the result. This is my baked hair map that is baked from a regular render into the hair. And this we can just export. We can save this again, image, save. Don't forget to save. It has a little star behind the name image if you haven't saved yet. That is pretty much how I fixed the hair.